Haribol. So, I'm probably going to end up upsetting everyone. We live in a time where there is so much change taking place. And I don't think that there is sufficient data in to say how we've done over the last 20 years. I personally find that there are serious problems with the social model. And the problems are so readily manifest with massively increasing amounts of addiction to psychotropic substances. The use of things is just like mind-boggling, starting even with quite young children. We see more problem with different forms of addiction. We see increasing amounts of people suffering from feeling disconnected to this world, feeling purposeless, suffering from depression at rates that are unprecedented in human history. And yet nobody's sort of like thinking, well, maybe our social philosophy needs a relook. You know, we're just going down this path. And even though there is this fruit there, it's not, you know, what we just want to keep playing at the edges and kind of like fine-tuning the wrong direction. No, fine-tuning the wrong direction is not going to help you. I know that not all conditions of depression, for instance, are the same, but they do have very common characteristics. Some forms, especially heavy forms of clinical depression, may be attributed to certain types of imbalances in the brain and things. But from the yogic perspective, there's a little different, not a little, a massively different paradigm. In modern science and medicine, there is fundamentally the view that you have a body, and that body includes a brain, and the mind is a function of the brain. Now that idea is not held by most, or if not a large number, of leading neurologists, people that specialize in the brain. And of course the yogic view is entirely different. The yogic view is that there are three things at play here. One is the gross physical body. The second is the mind, which is actually different than the brain or anything. It's a whole different form of energy. And the third one is the living being, the spiritual being, the Atma, the self, who occupies the body and experiences everything that the body experiences one of the reasons I'm bringing that up is because it can happen that the equipment is not functioning very well. Just like if you have a car and you've got a flat tire and you don't have a spare tire and you're really in an urgent need, you've got to get somewhere, and so you're trying to drive on a flat tire. Or you've got other kinds of mechanical problems with the car. It keeps backfiring, keeps jumping, and you've just got to put up with it and get to where you're going. So it is a fact that both the body, well, let me put it there, the body, including the brain, can have an effect and will have an effect on how the mind functions. But it is not always the case that what's going on in your mind is because of some chemical imbalance in the brain. For the majority of people, their experience with sadness, with loneliness, with a depressive condition has a lot more to do with their focus in life than it does with dealing with some broken equipment. What's really amazing is you've got this multi-billion-dollar industry that's producing psychotropic substances, chemicals that alter the chemical balances in the brain, and they say they've got it under control, but they have never cured any form of mental illness with psychotropic substances. Which means, well, maybe we should rethink about how they are used and what they are used for. We also have this problem that a lot of diagnosis of different conditions is being driven by drug companies who have this profit motive. They're there to make money, and a lot of them make more money than most countries have GDPs in the world. And there are so many documentaries about how when they've invested billions in developing some chemical substance and it's used for something, when the patent is expiring, they will now use it for another category of illness that has never yet been identified. And so they give new names to things, names that didn't exist before. And they market it to the doctors, they market them on television. So I'm not saying everything is evil, I'm not a conspiracy theory nut. But it is a fact that we need to recognize that there are a lot of different things in play, and we need to learn how to take care of ourselves, and we should always question. A common characteristic with all forms of depression is this over-focus on what? Me. It's not, it's not a joking matter or anything. I'm not suggesting that it is, nor am I suggesting it's an easy thing to deal with. If you really studied the yogic approach to an analysis of psychology and how the mind functions and the effect that it has on us and how it is influenced by many things, it's completely astonishing. It's incredibly profound. But there is this common focus where it becomes about me. and my inability to get out of this hole that I'm falling into. I feel alone. I feel incredibly overwhelmed. I feel unable to even get out of bed and do anything. If you look at, some really noticeable changes over the last 50 years socially. 50 years ago, there was this common ideas. One was a sense of duty. You have a sense of duty to other people in this world. And even if you are having a shitty day, I'm sorry, you get out of bed and you go and do what you have to do because there is a duty attached to it. Children were taught that they are not the center of the universe. I'm sorry, you're going to have to stand in line. Yes, you want things and you think that you need things, but your wants and needs are not the priority in this family. They are not the priority in society. So get a grip. We will deal with it gradually and when we have the time. And so kids learned, people grew up with this greater sense of a social awareness. This whole thing with social media, there's no social awareness. It's totally me-focused. It's all about me. In fact, selfie, and it's not even the true self. It's this false image of who we are and what we have to live up to, and looking at everybody else and judging them in relation to my life, or their life is more perfect, or and it's just like, they know that if you go over about 30 minutes of time looking at other people's profiles on Facebook or any other social media, Instagram, the more time that you spend beyond a very limited amount of time, there will be a corresponding increase in your feeling of alienation, in your feeling of being less, not having a perfect life like others, an increase in a feeling of enviousness of others. My God, when I was a kid, we were raised and told to envy what others have is very bad. It is bad for you, it is bad for others, it is bad for the world. Don't go there. So, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, people lived in a different kind of world where, yeah, sure, I thought I was important. I used to think it was like, the world somewhat revolving around me. But in that world, there's a hell of a lot of other people, and I need to give them some space in my world, because if I don't, things aren't going to go very well for me. And when you remove this awareness of others and the sense of duty and responsibility, and that you and your desires should not be, at the paramount, the highest peak of everything in life, if you can come down from that peak, you will feel a lot healthier. On that peak, it's like Mount Everest. You are oxygen deprived. Your body is eating itself. You are suffering from altitude sickness. Unless you descend from there, you are definitely going to die. And it's kind of like that's where we've gone. We're sitting on this peak of self-centeredness. We have lost the sense of responsibility and duty. And it's just become about me and my desire for happiness. And you know what? I don't care how much stuff you put on your body, you poke into your body, how much stuff you consume in different ways, it will never make you happy. It can't. You can feel some pleasure, some pleasurable reaction to things, but it will not make you happy. It can't. And we have bought into these messages that, oh, I'm the most important person in the world. It's all about me. And I deserve happiness. And I will get happiness by consuming this, by experiencing this, by doing this. And it's all a massive lie. There's no truth to it. And for those who are not, in a state of clinical depression, if you're feeling depressed, well, what do you expect? Am I cruel? I feel like everybody needs a good slap, me included. Like, get a life. Don't you know what's going on in the world? Do you really think it's all about you? No, it's not. You have a place. So the more that you can move the needle away from being solely focused on yourself, and you don't even know who you are, the more you can tilt it towards having a greater sense of responsibility and feeling duty-bound to look into other people's happiness and their lives and their things and consider what should be my contribution to society, to family, to others. I mean, people can't even tolerate. I mean, the divorce rate is like, does anybody get married with the idea that I'm going to get divorced? Well, it's become more common now. People sign prenups, prenuptial agreements that in case we break up, this is who gets what and how it's all going to go. I mean, what a way to start a partnership with a prenup. Of course, you're already, predicting the demise of this relationship. We enter into relationships and it becomes all about me and my partner's obligation to make me happy and to provide me with happiness. Who are we to put such a load on another person that you are responsible for my happiness? I'm sorry, that's not true. No other person is responsible for your happiness. You are responsible. And by making intelligent and responsible choices about how you are going to live, by being more compassionate and thoughtful about others, I promise you, your life will become happier. In fact, I guarantee it. And the more you withdraw from that and become focused on yourself and what you're not getting and what you deserve and way things should be for you, the more unhappy you will be, the more depressed you will become. Do not look for that permanent happiness that we desire in a world which is by nature temporary. That is crazy. That is really crazy. There is no happily ever after here. It doesn't belong in this place. That we must seek. That is a spiritual need, and we must seek it through a spiritual quest. We must seek it with spiritual solutions. So, that's my... And of course the idea of suicide, because I saw that on the poster, I'm going, whoa, suicide. Suicide is just like, my God, don't do it. It's the dumbest thing that you can do. You're talking about out of the frying pan into the fire? Try suicide and see what happens. You are an eternal being. You don't die when the body dies. You can kill your body, but you will go on. And you will bring your mind with you, and you will bring your suffering with you. It does not end at death. You may not agree with that, but I'm telling you, that is the truth. That is the reality. And for a person that feels so utterly desperate, if you could just consider others, if you can consider the enormous unhappiness and suffering that you will bring to those who love you and care for you by this very selfish, it's actually selfish because it's all about me and my desire to end my unhappiness. Sorry if this is a tough love session, but this is the reality. Don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not an answer. It's not a solution. You will find that one of the key things they teach people, if you are in a depressed state, even if you're on medication, you got to get off your ass and get outside and go walk, go engage in activity, engage in some physical pursuit, because it actually grounds you and gets you out of your head for a little while. And people start feeling better by doing it. And you will feel even better if you actually go and show some kindness, do something kind for someone else. I think I've mentioned before, we do a meditation program in the maximum security prison. And one of the guys confided in me about how he had really planned to commit suicide. He's been in there for 17 years. It's really quite hellish for him. He doesn't see any way out. And he had contemplated suicide. He had figured out the right place to do it and what day he was going to do it and how he was going to do it. And then when that time came, he was so focused on doing it, he went to that place and there was already somebody else there, and they were in the process of attempting suicide. And it hit him like really heavy that he saw somebody suffering so much that they were going to do this really, the heaviest thing that you can do. And he began talking to the person. He interceded and he spoke with the person with a desire to help them in their state. And then I asked him, so what happened to you? He goes, I don't know, I forgot about it. And that's like, this is the proof, this is the classic example, that even you're on your way to commit suicide, totally absorbed in your suffering and your condition, and you see somebody else and you recognize in that person their suffering, their situation, and you seek to try and help them deal with that. And in doing that, your problems just subside. They get moved to another place. So this is what is required. If you are going to be totally fixated on this temporary world as everything, if you think that you can find perfect happiness, perfect love here, you will become depressed. Because this is not the place for that. This world is temporary. And the experiences, even, doesn't matter how exciting or thrilling they are, do not fulfill our deepest need for true happiness, which is a spiritual need. Nor do they provide for us the type of love that we actually seek. So accept things. This world is far from perfect. I am far from perfect. My relationships will be very imperfect. The things I acquire and experience will not perfectly fulfill me. They will be imperfect, but that's okay. That's the nature of things. I can take care of that business, but I must take care of the inner business as well, my own spiritual development, the place where I can really experience true happiness and fulfillment. Okay? Is that all right? Anybody going to throw a chair at me or anything? No. Thank you very much. And consider it. It is true. I promise you it is true. Haribol. Of course, the thing that will make it so that we can become more focused on our true self, not the false idea or the false self, the true, our spiritual, each one of you is the most wonderful, tender, incredibly lovable spiritual being. That is your spiritual nature. And if you want to experience that reality, then you must begin a little bit of a spiritual journey. This process of mantra meditation is incredibly potent, very powerful in helping us come to a truly spiritual experience and spiritual realization. So the more you engage in it, the better off you will be.
Hare Krishna
Thank you very much.
Thank you.